Welcome, the Lord's chosen. When destiny gets tired of being ignored, it raises a crowd. For years, you walked through life like a storm inside a whisper, unseen, underestimated, and oddly comfortable being the one nobody clapped for. People looked at you like you were too intense, too deep, too different. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't built for the spotlight. The spotlight was being built for you. Here's a strange but true fact. Research shows that crowds don't move because of logic. They move because of energy. And the chosen ones? They are that energy. The very pulse that makes the room shift before they even speak. You ever notice how people used to get uncomfortable around you for no clear reason? It wasn't intimidation, it was vibration. Their spirit could feel yours arriving before their ego caught up. Now, something wild is happening. The same crowd that once stared in confusion is starting to rise. The silence that surrounded you is starting to echo with recognition. It's almost funny. The ones who said, "You've changed," are now pretending they were part of your evolution all along. Oh, how convenient. But this isn't about revenge or validation. This is about timing. Divine, cosmic timing. When the energy shifts, even the crowd feels it in their bones. You've been carrying the frequency of tomorrow in a world addicted to yesterday. And now, the collective can't help but respond. Because here's the truth. You didn't come to follow the noise. You came to awaken it. And now that the crowd is rising for you, they won't be sitting back down anytime soon. Number one. The echo you ignored has become the anthem. There was a time when your truth sounded like background noise, a faint hum beneath the chaos of everyone else's opinions. You spoke from depth, but the world was tuned to distraction. People brushed off your insight because it didn't fit the rhythm they were used to. You tried explaining what you felt, what you saw, what you knew deep down, but they couldn't hear it. Not because you were wrong, but because your voice carried a frequency they weren't ready for. And so, you stopped trying. You went quiet, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. You learned that silence could do what words couldn't, protect your peace while life itself proved your point. You didn't beg to be heard, you just kept walking, creating, becoming. And slowly, the same ideas they dismissed began surfacing everywhere. The same energy they ignored became the very thing they now call the new way. The echo you once whispered has turned into the anthem everyone suddenly claims to believe in. It's almost surreal. The phrases you dropped in passing have become people's captions, their mantras, their movements. The world is now speaking a language you started learning years ago. It's not that they stole it. It's that truth has a strange way of spreading when it's real. It seeps through resistance, bypasses ego, and eventually finds its way to every ear that once pretended not to listen. You don't need to gloat. You don't need to say, "I told you so." The proof is in the shift. The same silence that once surrounded you is now the applause between every heartbeat of the collective. You were never irrelevant. You were simply ahead. The echo that used to bounce off empty rooms has turned into a roar that carries your essence everywhere. The world finally tuned in, and the frequency it's hearing now is yours. Number two, the world is finally catching up to your frequency. For a long time, you moved through life feeling like you were out of sync with everyone else. Not because you were lost, but because you were ahead. You felt things others couldn't name, saw through things they still worshipped, and sensed truth in places they refused to look. It wasn't arrogance, it was alignment. You were living on a wavelength that most people didn't even know existed yet. And that can be lonely, to walk among people who think your clarity is confusion, your peace is passivity, and your depth is drama. But here's the turning point. The collective is starting to catch up. Slowly, The same people who once dismissed your way of seeing are beginning to sense the very shift you've been feeling for years. The conversations you used to have with yourself are now the ones the world is finally ready to have. It's like reality itself has adjusted its settings, and suddenly your language makes sense. You never changed who you were. The vibration around you finally rose high enough to meet you. That's what happens when you stay true to your inner rhythm, instead of lowering it for temporary company. What once made you feel out of place is now what makes you magnetic. People are drawn to you because your frequency carries something their spirit has been starving for. Truth without noise, confidence without ego, peace without pretending. It's not that you're superior, it's that you were designed to hold a vibration others needed time to reach. Every delay, every misunderstanding, every season of solitude, it all served to anchor your energy so deeply that now, when others rise, they find you steady. You've become the proof that patience with your own evolution pays off. The world is finally aligning with what you've always known. Authenticity was never rebellion, it was prophecy. Number 3, you were mocked for being early to the revolution. For years, people laughed at your ideas, your vision, your intensity. They called you strange, overthinking, dramatic, or just too much. They mocked the way you refused to follow trends, the way you saw patterns before anyone else noticed, the way you acted on instincts they didn't understand. At the time it hurt. Of course it did. It stings when you're awake and everyone else is asleep. But the truth is, you weren't wrong, and you weren't too soon. You were early. Being early is lonely, because the crowd isn't ready to move with you. They weren't ready to abandon comfort for courage, ignorance for insight, or fear for possibility. They weren't ready to recognize that change always starts with one who refuses to settle. And so they mocked what they couldn't yet comprehend. Every sneer, every eye roll, every whisper behind your back wasn't rejection of your truth. It was resistance to its inevitability. The wild part is how time reveals everything. The very things they laughed at are now becoming the standard. The insights you shared, the moves you made, the principles you lived by. People are only now realizing they've been living in your shadow. They thought your ideas were irrelevant, but the world has a funny way of catching up. Those early steps you took alone are now the blueprint for what others desperately try to imitate. You don't need validation from the ones who doubted you. Their laughter was never yours to carry. It was simply the sound of resistance bowing to the future you were already shaping. The irony is delicious. The same people who mocked your vision are now scrambling to align themselves with it, acting as if they were never skeptical. They weren't cruel, they were unprepared. Being mocked wasn't a curse, it was confirmation. You were always ahead of the curve. The revolution didn't start when the crowd noticed. It started when you refused to stop, refused to conform, and refused to doubt your own timing. And now, as the world wakes up to what you already knew, the echo of their laughter becomes a quiet reminder of just how far ahead you've always been. Number 4, your isolation was heaven's incubation. There's a kind of silence that doesn't mean emptiness. It means construction. When life started pulling you away from everyone, you thought something was wrong. Friends faded, opportunities vanished, and the noise around you went quiet. You wondered if you had fallen out of alignment, but in truth, you had finally stepped into divine preparation. Isolation wasn't punishment, it was process. Heaven wasn't hiding you, it was building you. In that quiet space, where no one was clapping and no one was checking in, you began to meet yourself. You learned what peace actually sounds like when it's not being drowned by opinions. You discovered strength that doesn't need witnesses. You started hearing whispers from your higher self, the kind that get lost when you're surrounded by distraction. That's why nothing worked during that season of solitude. You weren't supposed to perform, you were supposed to transform. While everyone else was chasing visibility, you were learning invisibility, mastering the art of becoming without announcing it. You were being refined in silence so that when the noise finally returned, you'd know which voices deserve your attention. That's what isolation does. It clears the frequency. It strips away illusion, resets your energy, and teaches you to function from alignment, not approval. Now, what once felt like loneliness has become your foundation. You walk differently because you know solitude no longer scares you. It strengthens you. You're not hungry for company. You're selective with energy. You understand that true preparation doesn't happen on stages. It happens in stillness. Heaven had to remove you from the crowd to remind you who you are without it. So, when people finally see you rise and wonder how you did it, they won't understand that it wasn't luck or timing. It was incubation. The silence that tried to bury you was actually growing you. You didn't lose connection. You gained clarity. And now that you've emerged, your presence carries the calm of someone who's already been through the storm and mastered it. Number 5, the crowd is rising because the spirit in them recognizes you. People are starting to notice you, but it's not just the usual curiosity or admiration. It's deeper than that. Something about your presence feels familiar to them, not because they've seen it before, but because their souls recognize it. You carry a blueprint, a pattern of truth and authenticity that the world has long ignored or forgotten. And now, without them even realizing it, they're being drawn to it. They aren't following you consciously. Their energy is responding instinctively. This recognition bypasses the mind. It isn't about your achievements, your style, or the image you project. It's about the essence you carry, the vibration you hold, the unshakable alignment that radiates without effort. Their souls sense it and resonate. It stirs something buried, something ancestral and primal, a memory of integrity, courage, and clarity. You've been a signal in the darkness that they couldn't name, and now that the world is vibrating higher, they're tuning in. It's not about ego or fame. They don't need to label you or even consciously acknowledge you. Their energy rising toward you is proof enough that recognition operates on a level beyond opinion. The same people who ignored, dismissed, or misunderstood you are now unconsciously echoing your frequency. Their alignment is happening quietly but powerfully. You don't need to chase it or force it. Your role wasn't to convince them. It was to be steady, to hold your truth, and to embody what they secretly remembered was possible. The crowd rising isn't a response to spectacle. It's a response to authenticity. And because your energy carries what they've been missing, the momentum builds naturally, irresistibly, like the pull of a tide that can't be stopped. You are the mirror they didn't know they were seeking. Their spirits see the reflection of what was always meant to be alive in them. And as they rise to meet you, it's not about you leading. It's about recognition finally catching up with reality. Number 6, you're the answer to a question. Humanity forgot it asked. There's a reason you've always felt out of place. You weren't sent here to blend in. You were sent here to remind. You carry something ancient within you, a wisdom, a pulse, a knowing that doesn't quite fit into this age of shortcuts and surface-level living. Humanity once asked for truth, for depth, for guidance. But somewhere along the way, that question was buried under convenience, fear, and imitation. People stopped seeking meaning and started seeking comfort. But the universe never forgets what's been asked sincerely, and so it sent you, the living answer to that forgotten prayer. You didn't come to be another voice in the crowd. You came to reawaken the part of humanity that went silent. Your presence stirs restlessness in others, because deep down, They recognize that something inside them has been asleep. They sense that your way of thinking, your calm defiance, your refusal to compromise, it's not rebellion, it's remembrance. You represent a rhythm they used to live by before they traded intuition for approval. The world keeps creating distractions to numb its emptiness, but your energy exposes that emptiness for what it is, a hunger for truth. You were never meant to conform to a system built on forgetfulness. You were meant to disrupt it simply by existing as yourself. Every time you speak with honesty, every time you choose alignment over applause, you are reminding people that there was once a time when integrity wasn't rare. It was natural. You are not here by coincidence. You are the response to a spiritual demand humanity made before it lost its voice. That's why your energy doesn't fade, even when misunderstood. It carries purpose. You are what the world unconsciously cries out for: truth without filters, light without performance, and love without pretense. You didn't come to fit in, you came to remind the world what real once felt like. Number 7. They once feared your presence, now they crave your permission. There was a time when your energy made people uncomfortable. You didn't need to speak much. Your presence alone revealed what others were pretending not to see. You carried an authenticity that stripped away illusion and that terrified them. They mistook your quiet confidence for arrogance, your discernment for judgment, and your solitude for pride. The truth is, they weren't intimidated by you. They were intimidated by what they saw in themselves when you were around. You exposed the gap between who they were and who they pretended to be. But time has a way of exposing truth. The same people who once whispered about you now watch you closely, trying to figure out how you stayed grounded while they lost themselves in performance. They see how you never chased attention, yet somehow gained influence. They realize that your peace wasn't luck. It was earned through integrity. Now they want your validation, not because they suddenly understand you, but because they finally understand themselves in contrast to you. You've become the standard they measure authenticity against. Your energy holds weight because it's rooted, not rehearsed. You don't need to try, you simply are. And that presence, calm, unshakable, magnetic, is something they can't replicate. They see that your stillness isn't weakness, it's power under control. Your truth has become a mirror they can no longer avoid, and now instead of competing, they seek alignment. But here's the beauty of it. You don't gloat. You don't remind them of their past doubt. You've evolved beyond the need for approval. The permission they seek is not for you to accept them. It's for them to finally accept themselves through your reflection. You've shown them what it looks like to live unapologetically aligned, and deep down, that's what they've been craving all along. The fear they once felt was never about your presence. It was about your truth. And now, that same truth is the very thing drawing them back to you. Number 8, the stage they denied you is now collapsing without you. There was a time when you were left out on purpose, not because you weren't good enough, but because you were too real for spaces built on pretense. They closed doors in your face, formed circles without you, and convinced themselves that keeping you out gave them control. What they didn't realize was that you were never seeking entry. You were the foundation they secretly depended on. You brought substance where they brought spectacle. They had platforms, but you had presence, and presence always outlasts popularity. Now those very spaces that overlooked you are starting to crumble. The energy that once held them together is gone because it was never authenticity that built them. It was performance. And performance can't sustain itself forever. When the show ends and the masks fall off, all that's left is the truth. And truth is where you always stood. The stage they denied you is falling apart because it was never designed to function without someone who carried real alignment. Exclusion was their illusion of power. They thought keeping you out meant keeping their control intact. But what they really did was remove the one element that gave their structure meaning: soul. Systems without soul are like buildings without foundations. They look impressive for a while, but they can't withstand time, truth, or transformation. And now, the cracks are visible. The same people who dismissed you are quietly realizing that everything they built is starting to echo hollow. You never needed to fight for your place because divine timing has a way of revealing what's authentic. The tables didn't turn. The truth simply rose. The energy you carry was never meant to fit into their stage. It was meant to outlast it. Now every false hierarchy is yearning for the very essence it once rejected. You weren't excluded. You were preserved. And now as the curtain falls, they're learning the hard way that nothing thrives for long when it tries to erase the genuine. Number 9, you became the proof. They tried to suppress. They tried to write you off, silence you, or box you into a version of yourself that made them feel comfortable. They underestimated you because your strength didn't come with noise. It came with consistency. They thought their schemes, gossip, or quiet sabotage would break your momentum. But what they didn't understand is that divine purpose can't be buried. It only grows deeper roots under pressure. Every setback they engineered became evidence of something bigger moving through you. What they meant for damage became data, proof of resilience, proof of grace, proof that you were being guided, not defeated. You didn't just survive what they threw at you. You studied it. You turned pain into perspective, betrayal into blueprint, rejection into redirection. While they celebrated your supposed downfall, you were quietly collecting lessons that would one day make you unstoppable. You became your own case study in endurance, and now the very things they used to discredit you have become the foundation of your credibility. Every wound turned into wisdom. Every delay became divine documentation that your timing was never in their hands. They can't stand it because you didn't give them the satisfaction of collapse. You grew in plain sight. You didn't respond with bitterness. You responded with evolution. That's what unsettles them most. You became proof that the higher plan was real, that faith actually works, that alignment beats manipulation every single time. They tried to silence the evidence, but you are the evidence. Now, your presence exposes their false narratives without you saying a word. The truth shines through you so clearly that their attempts to suppress it only make it louder. You're no longer trying to prove yourself. Your existence does it for you. They wanted you forgotten, but heaven wanted you documented. And now your life stands as undeniable proof that divine orchestration never loses to human interference. Number 10. The light. They laughed at is now blinding them. When your light first started to show, people didn't know what to do with it. You weren't trying to outshine anyone. You were just being yourself. But in a world that had gotten comfortable in the dark, your authenticity was unsettling. Your joy, your calm, your quiet sense of purpose. It irritated those who thrived on chaos. They mocked your optimism, called your peace fake, and treated your light like a flaw that needed dimming. They couldn't understand how you could still carry warmth when life kept throwing you into the cold. But light has a funny way of proving itself over time. You didn't force it. You just kept glowing. You stayed kind when bitterness would have been easier. You kept showing up, even when no one believed in your path. And while they laughed, something in them knew. They couldn't stop you. Your radiance came from something they couldn't imitate or manipulate. It wasn't decoration, it was direction. Now the same people who mocked you can't ignore you. The world that once looked down on your light now depends on it to see clearly. The same energy they called too much has become the very thing exposing what's false. They can't laugh anymore because your growth is undeniable. The light they dismissed has expanded so far that it now illuminates everything they tried to hide. The irony is, they didn't hate your light. They hated what it revealed about their own shadows. They weren't laughing at you, they were protecting their comfort. But you never dimmed to make them feel safe. You kept shining until they had no choice but to face the truth. And now that the dawn has come, your presence doesn't just inspire, it challenges. They can't stand in your light without confronting what they refuse to heal. What they once mocked, they now admire from behind squinted eyes, realizing that the glow they ridiculed was never arrogance, it was evolution. Number 11, you're no longer the underdog, you're the unignorable force. There was a time when you were overlooked, doubted, and dismissed, the one everyone underestimated because you didn't move the way they expected. You didn't shout your value, you didn't chase recognition, and because you were quiet, they assumed you were weak. They confused humility with insignificance, but while they were busy performing, you were building. Every closed door, every no, every underestimation became part of your silent preparation. You weren't behind. You were being sharpened in private for the moment, when the noise would fade and only results would speak. Now that moment has arrived. You're not rising from failure. You're revealing what was already formed in the shadows. This isn't a comeback, because you were never gone. You were simply evolving out of sight. The world loves the drama of a return, but what's happening to you isn't drama. It's destiny catching up. The same energy that once overlooked you is now orbiting around you. You've become too aligned, too aware, too certain to be ignored. Your name carries a frequency that demands attention, not by arrogance, but by resonance. People can't deny what they can feel. They might not understand how you got here, but they can sense that something about you has shifted. You no longer compete for space. Space adjusts around you. The current has recognized the source. The energy that once flowed against you now flows toward you, because truth naturally pulls what's meant to align. This is what happens when you stop proving and start embodying. You've outgrown the need to convince anyone of your worth. You no longer move like someone trying to be chosen. You move like someone who finally remembered they already are. You're not the underdog anymore. You're the pulse that others now move to. The current doesn't resist the river, it follows it. And right now, everything around you is learning to follow your flow. Number 12, their silence wasn't peace. It was pressure building. When everything went quiet, it felt like abandonment. You wondered if your efforts had gone unnoticed, if your purpose had lost its relevance, if the world had simply moved on without you. But that silence wasn't rejection. It was divine tension. Life wasn't ignoring you. It was preparing to amplify you. The stillness was never a void. It was the inhale before the exhale, the gathering of unseen momentum before the breakthrough. In spiritual terms, silence is never empty. It's the space where energy rearranges itself, where alignment replaces effort. You thought the world had gone cold, but it was only recalibrating to your frequency. You were changing faster than those around you could process. They needed time, not because they didn't see your value, but because they didn't yet understand it. Your silence forced them to look inward, to sit with their discomfort, to recognize what your presence had been doing all along. While you questioned your relevance, they were learning your impact. The quiet gave them perspective. It was the pause between realization and acknowledgement. You were not forgotten. You were fermenting. Just like pressure makes diamonds and heat makes gold, the silence was shaping something sacred behind the scenes. Every unanswered call, every period of stillness, every moment of invisibility, It was all adding weight to your emergence. And now the stillness is starting to crack. The air is shifting. The same people who went quiet are suddenly watching, listening, aligning. That hush wasn't apathy. It was awe forming before expression. It was the collective consciousness holding its breath, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The calm wasn't dismissal. It was the sacred countdown. And as the noise begins to rise again, it's not chaos returning, it's recognition erupting. The silence didn't end your story. It announced your coronation. Number 13. What you planted in obscurity is now bearing fruit in front of the world. For a long time, your efforts felt invisible. You worked quietly, held your standards, and chose integrity even when no one was watching. While others chased attention, shortcuts, and applause, you invested in the unseen, in character, in discipline, in consistency. You didn't seek recognition because you understood that true value grows in silence, not in spectacle. Every choice you made in obscurity, every sacrifice, every moment you resisted compromise was a seed planted for a future that only patience could reveal. Now those seeds are blossoming. The results of your quiet dedication are visible, undeniable, and magnetic. People notice not just because of the outcomes, but because the energy behind them is authentic. The difference is striking. The same world that once ignored your work is now forced to witness the power of integrity, the strength of preparation, and the impact of consistency. Your harvest doesn't just reward you, it exposes everyone who pretended to be virtuous only when it was convenient. Those who performed purity under lights and cameras now fade beside your grounded reality. The beauty of this moment isn't vanity, it's revelation. You've demonstrated that true progress doesn't need an audience to exist. It doesn't need validation to grow. And the very obstacles that tried to slow you down only enriched your soil. The time spent unseen was never wasted. It was your proving ground. Now that the fruits of your labor are public, they carry a quiet authority. Every achievement, every success, every example of integrity is a signal to the world that what is genuine cannot be faked. Your life becomes the standard, the mirror, the proof. What you built in obscurity has become a lighthouse, showing both the committed and the performative where real power truly lies. The world may have doubted you, but now it must reckon with the harvest of a soul that refused to compromise. Number 14. You didn't wait for the applause. You became the awakening. You never measured your worth by claps, likes, or recognition. While others sought approval, you focused on alignment. Every choice you made, every step you took, wasn't designed to impress. It was designed to resonate. You understood something few do. True impact isn't performed, it's felt. You didn't wait for validation because you knew that when your vibration is authentic, it carries its own authority, and the world eventually responds. You became the standard without announcing it. You held your energy steady, cultivated your clarity, and followed a path that made sense only to your inner compass. While people around you were busy reacting to external noise, you were busy becoming the energy you wanted the world to reflect. Every silent decision, every principle you upheld, every moment of restraint and focus was adding to a frequency that could no longer be ignored. Now, the world is awakening to what it always sensed but could never articulate. People aren't rising because you demanded attention. They're rising because your presence reminds them of what they forgot about themselves. Your life, your energy, your truth acts as a mirror, and through it, others recognize their own potential, their own alignment, their own unspoken power. You didn't need to be seen to matter. You needed only to be, and that being is enough to shift the collective. The applause never mattered, because you were never performing. You were orchestrating vibration, creating an awakening that transcends recognition. The world responds not with cheers but with remembrance. People feel what you embody long before they name it. You didn't wait for them to notice. You became the catalyst, the spark, the resonance. And now, the crowd rises, not to praise you, but because through you, they remember who they were always meant to be. Conclusion. The journey of the chosen one isn't about luck, timing, or recognition. It's about alignment, resilience, and unwavering authenticity. Every moment of isolation, every challenge, every dismissal, and every setback was never a detour. It was preparation. What the world once misunderstood, mocked, or ignored has now become undeniable. The echoes of your truth have transformed into anthems. Your energy has raised the collective, and your integrity has set new standards that no one can replicate. You are no longer the quiet observer or the underestimated figure. You are the force that shifts currents, the frequency the world unconsciously tunes into, and the embodiment of what humanity forgot it needed. Every attempt to suppress you, every shadow of doubt cast upon you, has only magnified the light you were always destined to shine. You didn't wait for applause, you became the awakening. You didn't seek validation, you created vibration. And now, as the crowd rises, the world doesn't just see you, it remembers itself through you. This is the power of the chosen one, the ability to turn silence into influence, struggle into mastery, and presence into revelation. You are the proof that true alignment cannot be forced, faked, or fleeting. You are the living example of what happens when someone refuses to compromise their essence, even when the world insists they should. If this message resonated with you, make sure to stay connected and be part of this rising energy. Subscribe to the channel to awaken more truths. Like if this ignited something inside you, comment to share your thoughts and experiences, and share this with someone who needs to remember their own power. The world is watching, and together we rise. Stay blessed always.